When my wife sat me down for a serious talk, she said, "I've already asked your brother to be my boyfriend, and he said yes." When my wife sat me down for a serious talk, she said, "I've already asked your brother to be my boyfriend, and he said yes." "What do you mean?" He said yes. I stared at my wife Erica while she sat there calm like she'd just told me about switching our internet provider. We'd been married for 7 years, and my younger brother Derek had been living with us for the past 3 months after his apartment flooded. He agreed that our arrangement makes sense for everyone involved. She pulled out her laptop and opened a PowerPoint presentation titled "Our New Family Dynamic" with a photo of all 3 of us from last Thanksgiving. "I've thought this through rationally, and the benefits are clear." She clicked to the next slide, which had bullet points about household efficiency and shared expenses. My brother walked in from the kitchen carrying tea for her, but not for me. "Hey bro, we need to talk about the new arrangement." He sat next to Erica on the couch, and they held hands right in front of me. Erica explained how this is actually better for you too. Better for me? My wife wanting to date my brother was better for me. "You've been stressed with work lately, and having Derek help with my needs means less pressure on you." Erica said this like she was doing me a favor. She clicked to another slide showing a weekly schedule. "See? Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you have me. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Derek has me. Sundays, we all spend together as a family." She'd color-coded it with my days in green and Derek's in purple. This way, everyone gets attention and no one feels neglected. I stood up, but my legs felt weak. "You made a schedule for dating my brother?" Erica nodded, proud of her organization. "I also made a chore chart and a budget breakdown. Derek will contribute 30% to household expenses now as an official partner." She showed another slide with financial projections. "We'll actually save money with 3 incomes." Derek sipped the tea he'd made in my kitchen using my mug. "Plus, I already live here, so nothing really changes, except we're being honest about feelings." He touched Erica's knee. "We've been feeling this connection for weeks." Weeks. They'd been planning this for weeks while I went to work every day thinking my marriage was normal. "When did this start?" Erica looked thoughtful. "Remember when you had that conference in Denver? Derek and I really bonded that weekend. That was 6 weeks ago. I'd been gone 3 days for a work requirement. You slept with my brother while I was at a conference." They both laughed like I'd said something ridiculous. "We didn't sleep together. We just talked about our feelings and realized we're compatible," Derek added quickly. "Erica would never cheat. That's why we're doing this ethically." Ethically. They kept using that word. Erica pulled out a printed document. "I found this polyamory agreement template online. We just need to sign it to make things official." The document was 20 pages long with sections about date nights and intimate boundaries. "You already filled in our names. I noticed the date was from 2 weeks ago. We wanted to be prepared for this conversation," Derek said while scooting closer to Erica. "What about our marriage vows?" Erica flipped to another slide showing statistics. 20% of couples try ethical non-monogamy. "We're actually being progressive." Derek nodded. "In some cultures, brothers share wives. It's totally natural." He pulled out his phone. "I already joined some online groups for brother husbands." Erica showed another slide with a house floor plan. "I'm thinking we convert the garage into a second master suite. That way, everyone has privacy." She'd already priced out contractors. $18,000, but worth it for our new lifestyle. Our savings had $18,000 exactly. "You want to spend our entire savings?" Erica corrected me. "A bedroom for my second partner. We need to stop thinking in terms of possession." Derek stood up. "I know this is a lot, but we're trying something new and beautiful." He put his hand on my shoulder. "We're in love whether you accept it or not." That's when I smiled for the first time. "You know what? You're absolutely right." They both looked shocked at my sudden agreement. "Really?" Erica asked, suspicious. "Really? In fact, why don't we call my dad right now and tell him the good news?" Derek went pale. "Why would we call Dad?" I pulled out my phone, already dialing, to tell him about your new relationship. "I'm sure he'll want to know." Erica looked confused, but Derek grabbed my phone. "We don't need to involve parents yet," but Dad already answered on speaker. "Hey son, how's everything? The thing about my dad is he raised both of us, and he knows exactly who Derek really is. Derek was his favorite growing up, but that changed after he borrowed money from him and never paid it back. 3 separate times. Now he's standing in my living room holding hands with my wife and thinking I'm just going to let this slide." Dad was still waiting for an answer, and I was going to give him one he'd never forget. "What's going on over there?" Dad asked through the speaker, his voice carrying that dad tone that meant he knew something was up. I looked right at Derek while I answered. "Dad, I have some really exciting news about Derek. He's got a new girlfriend, and you'll never guess who it is." Derek's eyes went wide, and he started waving his hands at me like he could somehow stop the words from reaching the phone. "Wait, Dad, it's not what it sounds like," Derek said loud enough for him to hear, his voice going high and shaky. "We were going to tell everyone in our own time, and this is really not fair." Erica stepped forward and put her hand on Derek's shoulder like she was about to give a work presentation to a difficult client. "Mr. Whitfield, this is Erica. I think there's been a misunderstanding about how we're framing this situation. What we're doing is exploring modern relationship structures that many healthy couples are adopting these days. It's actually quite common, and there's a lot of research showing the benefits of expanded family units." She used that calm voice that used to make me feel safe, but now just made me want to throw something at her head. The phone went silent. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. 5 full seconds of nothing from my father. And I watched Erica's confident smile start to fade just a little at the edges. Derek was gripping Erica's arm so hard his knuckles were turning white. Then Dad spoke, and his voice was flat and cold in a way I'd only heard a few times in my whole life. Erica, are you sleeping with my younger son while you're married to my older son? Erica actually took a step back like the words had pushed her. Sir, that's not exactly. I mean, we haven't, technically. What I'm trying to say is that there's an emotional connection that developed naturally, and we have future plans that involve all three of us in a way that's fair and balanced, and I have a whole presentation that explains the structure if you'd like to see it sometime. She was stumbling over herself, and it was the first time I'd seen her lose that smug confidence since this whole nightmare started. Future plans, Dad repeated slowly. You have future plans to be with both of my sons. Erica nodded, even though Dad couldn't see her. Yes, sir, in an ethical framework that respects everyone's needs and boundaries. Modern psychology actually supports these kinds of arrangements when done correctly, with open communication and clear expectations. That's when Derek started crying. Not quiet tears, but full-on sobbing with his shoulders shaking. I knew this would happen, he wailed. I knew everyone would react this way. Nobody ever supports my choices. Nobody ever wants me to be happy. You all just want to control my life and tell me what I can and can't feel. He was doing that thing he'd done since we were kids where he made himself the victim no matter what he'd actually done. When he broke Mom's favorite lamp-playing ball in the house, it was somehow my fault for not stopping him. When he got caught cheating on a test in high school, it was the teacher's fault for making the test too hard. And now, here he was again, crying about how unfair everyone was being while he stood in my living room holding my wife's hand. Derek, Dad said through the phone, his voice still that scary calm. Put your brother on the phone, not on speaker, just him. Derek looked at me with something close to panic in his eyes. Dad, we should all talk about this together as a family. That's what Erica says is the healthy way to handle these conversations. But I was already walking toward the kitchen with my phone pressed to my ear. I'm here, Dad, I said, as I took him off speaker and closed the door behind me. The kitchen was dark and quiet, and I could still hear Derek crying in the living room, but it felt far away now. I need you to pack a bag, Dad said, and his voice was different now, softer, but serious in a way that made my throat tight. Pack enough for a few days and come stay with me tonight. Don't argue with them. Don't explain anything. Just get your things and leave. I leaned against the counter and felt my hands shaking. Dad, I don't even know what to do. They had a whole PowerPoint. They had a schedule with color coding. They already filled out some kind of contract. Dad made a sound that might have been a laugh if it wasn't so angry. Your brother has been pulling this kind of thing his whole life, but this is something else. You come here tonight and we figure out your next steps together. I know a divorce lawyer from my golf club. Good guy. Won the case for my friend when his husband tried to take everything. We're going to need someone like that. Divorce. The word hit me in the chest, but it also felt right. Like finally someone was saying out loud what I'd been too scared to think. What about Derek? I asked. What about him? Dad's voice was hard. He made his choice. He chose your wife over his own brother. That's not something you come back from. Now pack your bag and get out of there before they try to talk you into staying. Erica's got that smooth way of talking, and I don't want you listening to another word she says tonight. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Okay, Dad, I'll be there in an hour. I hung up and stood in my dark kitchen for a minute, just breathing. Through the wall, I could hear Erica's voice, low and soothing, probably telling Derek that everything would be fine and that I'd come around once I had time to process. That was her favorite word, process. Like my whole life falling apart was just something I needed to think about a little longer before I agreed it was a good idea, but I wasn't going to process anything. I was going to pack a bag and go to my father's house and let someone who actually loved me help figure out how to fix this mess. I walked back through the living room without looking at either of them and went straight upstairs to our bedroom. My bedroom. The bedroom I'd shared with Erica for 7 years, thinking we were building something real. I pulled out a suitcase and started throwing clothes into it. I could hear footsteps on the stairs, and then Erica appeared in the doorway looking worried for the first time since she'd started her stupid presentation. What are you doing? She asked. What did your dad say? I didn't answer. I just kept packing. Underwear, socks, the comfortable jeans I wore on weekends, my phone charger, the book I'd been trying to read for months but never had time for. We should talk about this, Erica said, stepping into the room. Running away to your father's house isn't going to solve anything. We need to have an adult conversation about our feelings and our future. I zipped the suitcase and finally looked at her. My lawyer will be in touch, I said, and the shock on her face was worth every horrible minute of this night. I walked past her and down the stairs where Derek was still sitting on the couch with tissues all around him. He looked up at me with red eyes. Where are you going? We're not done talking, but I was done. I was so done. I walked out the front door and got in my car and drove to my father's house while my phone buzzed with texts from both of them that I didn't read. The whole drive, I kept thinking about that schedule Erica had made. Green for me, purple for Derek. Like we were appointments in her calendar instead of people. Like 7 years of marriage meant nothing more than a time slot she could rearrange whenever she wanted. But that was over now. When I pulled into Dad's driveway and saw the porch light on waiting for me, I felt something I hadn't felt in hours. Safe. I was going to be okay. Dad was waiting for me in the kitchen with 2 cups of coffee on the table, and that look on his face that meant he'd been thinking hard about something. I sat down across from him and wrapped my hands around the warm mug while he just looked at me for a minute like he was trying to figure out where to start. There's something I need to tell you, he said finally. And the way he said it made my stomach feel cold. About a month ago, Derek called me asking for money. $5,000. He said it was for repairs at his apartment from flood damage. He rubbed his face with his hand like he was tired. He said the insurance wasn't covering covering everything, and he needed help getting back on his feet. I thought about Derek living in my guest room for 3 months, eating my food, using my things, and apparently planning to take my wife the whole time. Did you give it to him? Dad shook his head. I told him I'd think about it. Something felt off about the whole thing. The way he was talking about how stressed he was at your place, how he might need to stay there longer than planned. He reached for his phone on the table. Now I know why he really wanted that money. He wasn't planning to fix his apartment. He was planning to stay with you forever. He unlocked his phone and started scrolling through messages. I need to show you something, and I'm sorry because it's going to hurt, but you need to see who your brother really is. He turned the phone toward me, and I saw a long chain of text messages between him and Derek going back months. Months of my brother complaining about me to our own father. Read them, Dad said quietly. So I did. The first one was from 4 months ago before the flood even happened. Derek had written that I was being controlling about the guest bathroom and wouldn't let him keep his stuff in there. That wasn't true. I just asked him to keep his toiletries off the counter because Erica used that bathroom too. The next message was worse. He'd told Dad that I was cold and distant with Erica and that he could see how unhappy she was. She deserves better, he'd written. Someone who actually pays attention to her instead of working all the time. I felt sick reading it. Another message from 2 months ago said Erica had been confiding in him about our marriage problems and that he thought he could make her happier than I ever could. He'd actually written those words to our father. He was telling you all this and you didn't warn me. I looked up at Dad and he looked guilty. I thought he was just being dramatic. You know how Derek gets. He always has to make everything about himself. I didn't think he'd actually try to steal your wife. I thought he was just jealous and venting. He took the phone back and scrolled to another message. Look at the date on this one. It was from 3 months ago, about a week before Derek's apartment flooded. He'd written to Dad saying that my marriage was falling apart and that he was worried about me, but also that maybe it was for the best because Erica needed someone who understood her. 1 week before the flood, I sat back in my chair and felt something click in my brain. Dad, when exactly did Derek's apartment flood? Dad looked at me with his eyebrows raised. About 3 months ago, middle of the month. Why? I did the math in my head. Derek had been texting Dad about my marriage problems and about how Erica deserved better. Exactly 1 week before his apartment conveniently flooded and he needed to move in with us. 1 week before, he suddenly had an excuse to be in my house every day while I was at work. 1 week before, he started making tea for my wife and bonding with her over there. Feelings. Do you think he caused the flood on purpose? I asked, and even as I said it, I knew it sounded crazy, but Dad didn't laugh. He just looked at me with this serious expression. I think your brother saw an opportunity and he took it. Whether he caused the flood or just used it, the timing is too perfect to ignore. He stood up and started pacing the kitchen like he did when he was working through a problem. We need to call your mother. She's 2 states away, but she always knew how to handle Derek's schemes when you boys were growing up. Remember when Derek convinced everyone at school that you stole his science project? Your mother was the one who figured out Derek had done the whole thing himself. I did remember that. I was 15 and Derek was 12 and he'd copied my project and then told the teacher I'd stolen his work. Mom had gone to the school with both projects and pointed out that Derek's had my name whited out in one corner where he'd missed erasing it. Derek had cried and played the victim, and some people still believed his version, but at least the teacher knew the truth. It's late, I said, looking at the clock on Dad's wall. Mom's probably asleep. Your mother hasn't slept past 9 in 30 years, Dad said, already dialing. She'll want to know about this. The phone rang twice before Mom picked up. Dan, is everything okay? It's almost 10 years. I could hear the worry in her voice even through the phone speaker. Dad put her on speaker and set the phone on the table between us. The boys are having some trouble. Our older one is here with me now. Mom was quiet for a second. I had a feeling something was wrong. Is it about Derek? Dad and I looked at each other. Why would you think that? I asked. Mom sighed, and I could picture her sitting in her living room with her reading glasses on and a book in her lap, because Derek called me last week asking the strangest questions. He wanted to know about brothers in the Bible, specifically whether there were any stories about a man being expected to look after his brother's wife. My jaw dropped. Dad closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. He was asking about levirate marriage, Mom continued. He said it was for a book club discussion, but Derek hasn't read a book since high school. I knew something was going on, but I didn't want to pry. Now I'm guessing I should have. Mom, I said, leaning toward the phone. Derek and Erica want to be in a relationship together while I'm still married to her. They made a PowerPoint presentation about it. The silence on the other end was longer this time. When Mom spoke again, her voice was hard in a way I rarely heard from her. They made a what? A PowerPoint with schedules and charts and a contract. They want to date each other and they want me to be okay with it. Derek's been living with us for 3 months, and apparently he's been working on Erica the whole time. Mom made a sound that was half laugh and half something else. That boy, that sneaky little boy. I should have known when he called about the Bible stories. He was looking for permission. He wanted me to say something that made it okay. Dad jumped in. He also asked me for $5,000 last month, said it was for apartment repairs. Now we think he never planned to move back. He wanted to stay with them permanently. Of course he did, Mom said. Derek doesn't do anything without a plan. He's been like this since he was 6 years old and figured out he could get extra dessert by crying to each parent separately. She paused. What do you need me to do? Dad looked at me and I looked back at him. And for the first time since Erica had opened that stupid laptop, I felt like I wasn't alone in this. I don't know yet, I admitted. I just found out about all this tonight. Erica and Derek are still at my house, probably trying to figure out how to spin this. Dad gave me the name of a divorce lawyer. lawyer. Good, Mom said firmly. Use it first thing Monday morning. And don't go back to that house alone. Don't give them a chance to talk you into anything. I'm not going back, I said, and I meant it. Good boy, Dad said quietly. Mom's voice came through the phone again. I'm looking at flights right now. I can be there Saturday morning. We'll figure this out together as a family. A real family. Not whatever twisted thing Derek is trying to create. I barely slept that night in Dad's guest room, but when I did finally drift off, I slept harder than I had in months. When I woke up, the sun was already bright through the curtains, and I could smell coffee from downstairs. I checked my phone and saw over 20 messages from Erica and a bunch from Derek, but I didn't open any of them. I just put my phone on silent and went down to find Dad sitting at the kitchen table with his coffee and his laptop open to some legal website. Morning, son, he said without looking up. There's coffee in the pot and I already called that lawyer. He can see you Monday afternoon. I poured myself a cup and sat down across from him, feeling like maybe things were actually going to be okay. That's when we heard a car pull into the driveway. Dad looked up at me with his eyebrows raised and got up to look out the front window. His whole body went stiff. It's Erica, he said, and his voice went flat and cold in a way that made the hair on my arm stand up. She's getting out of her car with a folder. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but Dad put his hand up before I could even get out of my chair. Stay here. Let me handle this. He walked to the front door and I heard him open it before Erica could even knock. I moved closer to the doorway so I could see what was happening on the porch. Erica was standing there in her nice work blazer, looking like she'd practiced this whole thing in the mirror before driving over. She had a thick folder in her hands and she was already opening her mouth to start talking. We need to talk like adults, Erica said in that calm voice she always used when she was trying to sound reasonable. Your son is overreacting by involving family in what should be a private matter between married people. If we could just sit down and discuss this rationally, I'm sure we can find a solution that works for everyone. Dad stood in the doorway with his arms crossed and didn't move an inch to let Erica inside. You have exactly 2 minutes to explain yourself before I call the police for trespassing on my property. Erica didn't even blink at that. She just nodded like this was exactly what she expected and started pulling papers out of her folder. I understand this seems unconventional, she said in that explaining voice, but if you look at these articles from relationship experts and psychologists, you'll see that polyamory is actually a healthy and normal lifestyle choice for many couples. She held up the paper so Dad could see the headers and the highlighted sections. There's peer-reviewed research showing that people in consensual, non-monogamous relationships report high levels of satisfaction and communication. It's not something to be afraid of. It's actually progressive and modern, and many families are thriving with these arrangements. Dad looked at the papers in Erica's outstretched hand for about 1 second. Then he reached out and took them. I watched from the doorway as my father held those articles that Erica had probably spent hours printing and highlighting. And then Dad tore them in half right down the middle. He didn't read a single word. He just ripped them apart and let the pieces fall onto the porch floor at Erica's feet. Erica's mouth fell open. Sir, those were peer-reviewed studies from respected journals, she said, and I could hear her voice getting a little higher. If you would just take the time to educate yourself about modern relationship structures, you would understand that what Derek and I are proposing is based on solid psychological principles. Dad didn't move. You have about 90 seconds left. Then something shifted in Erica's expression, and I knew whatever came out of her mouth next was going to make me angry. Look, I didn't want to say this, Erica said, and her voice got lower like she was sharing something private. But the truth is, your son has been emotionally distant for years. He works all the time. He's never home. When he is home, he's tired and stressed, and he doesn't have any energy left for me or our relationship. I was lonely. I tried to talk to him about it, but he would just shut down. After 7 years of trying, I finally found someone who actually listens to me and makes me feel valued. Is it my fault that person happens to be his brother? I didn't plan for this to happen. Derek was just there. He understood me. He paid attention when your son wouldn't. Dad let her finish every word, and when Erica was done, my father spoke. My son will be in contact through his lawyer. Now get off my property. Erica actually took a step back like the words had pushed her. Wait, can't we at least talk about this? Your son is throwing away a 7-year marriage over a misunderstanding. We have a house together. We have shared accounts and plans and history. Dad's voice got even colder. The only person who threw away this marriage is you. And if you're not off my property in the next 10 seconds, I'm calling the police. Then he shut the door. Not slammed it, just closed it firmly like Erica wasn't even worth the effort of a slam. I ran to the front window and watched Erica standing on the porch looking completely lost. She stared at the closed door for a long moment. She looked down at the torn pieces of paper scattered on the porch floor. Slowly, she bent down and started picking them up, gathering the ripped articles in her hands like they still meant something. She walked back to her car, still clutching those ripped up articles, sat in the driver's seat for at least 2 full minutes just staring through the windshield at Dad's house, then finally started the car and pulled away. Dad came back into the kitchen and sat down across from me. You okay? He asked. I wasn't sure how to answer that. She blamed me, I said, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted. She said I was emotionally distant. She said that's why she went after Derek, like I made her do it. Dad shook his head slowly. That's what people like Erica do. They can't admit they did something wrong, so they find a way to make it someone else's fault. You could have been the perfect husband who did everything right and she still would have found an excuse. This is not your fault. Not any of it. Erica made a choice and Derek made a choice, and and now they get to live with those choices. But you don't have to live with them. You get to walk away and build something better. Erica sent 17 texts over the next 2 hours, and I watched each one come in without answering. First, she was being reasonable, then she was apologetic, then she got angry, saying I was destroying our family over a misunderstanding. The last text said Derek was packing his things and leaving because I'd made him feel unwelcome in his own brother's home. Friday night, I was sitting in Dad's living room trying to watch some cooking show and not think about my life falling apart when my phone rang. It wasn't Erica or Derek this time, but a friend from my fantasy football league, someone I'd known for years and trusted. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked before I could even say hello. "I just saw Derek's post and I wanted to check on you." I felt my stomach go tight. "What post?" There was a pause on the other end, like he couldn't believe I didn't know. "He posted this really long thing on social media about 20 minutes ago. It's everywhere. People are sharing it and commenting, and I just thought you should know before you see it from someone else." I thanked him and hung up and immediately opened my phone to Derek's page. Dad looked up from his crossword puzzle when he heard my breathing change. "What is it?" he asked, but I couldn't answer because I was too busy reading what my brother had written about me to the whole world. The post was long, at least 5 paragraphs, and it had a photo at the top of Derek looking sad, like he'd been crying. The caption said, "Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the worst," and then the rest of it was worse. He wrote about how he'd been living with me for 3 months after his apartment flooded, and how I'd been cold and controlling the whole time. He said I made him feel unwelcome in his own family, and that I'd always been jealous of him since we were kids. He talked about falling in love with someone unexpected, and how love doesn't follow the rules we think it should. He never said Erica's name, but anyone who knew us would figure it out. According to Derek's post, he hadn't done anything wrong. He'd just had feelings and been honest about them. And in response, his controlling older brother had kicked him out of the house and tried to turn their parents against him. He wrote that he was homeless now because of me and that he'd lost his family over something he couldn't help. "I never meant to hurt anyone," he'd written at the end. "I just fell in love. Is that really so unforgivable?" I scrolled down to the comments and felt sick. There were already over 100 of them, and most of them were on Derek's side. "Your brother sounds so toxic," one person wrote. "Real family would be happy that you found love." Another comment said, "Love is love. It doesn't matter who it's with. Your brother needs to grow up and stop being so controlling." Someone else wrote, "This happens more than people realize. Your brother is just mad because he's insecure about his own marriage." Nobody was asking what Erica's role in all this was. My hands were shaking as I started typing a response. But before I could finish, Dad was beside me, gently taking the phone out of my hands. "Don't do that," he said, and his voice was calm but serious. "Whatever you're about to write, don't. She's lying about me to everyone," I said. "People think I'm the bad guy." Dad shook his head slowly. "Let me tell you something my father told me a long time ago. Never fight a pig in mud. You both get dirty and the pig likes it. If you respond to that post, you're playing his game. Even if you tell the truth, people will just see 2 brothers fighting and they'll believe whoever cries prettier. And we both know that's Derek. So I'm just supposed to let him say all this about me?" Dad took his own phone out of his pocket. "No, you're gonna let me handle this. He's gonna take down that post by morning, or I start sharing some screenshots of my own. Let's see how sympathetic people are when they read what he really thinks of his brother." He hit the call button and put the phone on speaker. It rang 3 times before Derek answered, his voice stuffy like he'd been crying. "Daddy," he said. "Daddy, I'm so glad you called. I need to talk to you about what's happening. Nobody is listening to my side." Dad's voice was cold. "Derek, I saw your post." There was a pause. "I just needed people to know the truth. Everyone's against me, and I didn't do anything wrong. I just fell in love. Is that really so bad?" Dad cut him off. "You have until morning to take down that post." Derek's voice got harder. "Why?" "Because it makes my brother look bad. He's the one who called you and made this into a big family drama. I'm just telling my side of the story. I have a right to defend myself." Dad didn't raise his voice at all, but somehow that made it scarier. "Let me explain something to you. I have every text you've ever sent me saved on this phone, including the ones where you called your brother a boring workaholic, including the ones where you said Erica deserved better and you could make her happier, including the one where you asked me for $5,000 that we both know you never planned to use for apartment repairs." The line went silent. "If that post is still up by tomorrow morning," Dad continued, "I start sharing those texts with everyone. Your mother, your cousins, your aunts and uncles, everyone in the family who's reading your little victim story right now. They can all see what you really said about your brother before you stole his wife." Derek's voice came back smaller now. "You wouldn't do that. I'm your son too. You stopped being my son when you decided to destroy your brother's marriage." Dad said, "You have until morning. That's 12 hours to decide if you want the whole family knowing who you really are." He hung up before Derek could respond. By Saturday morning, the post was gone, but the damage was done. Half our extended family had seen it. Cousins were texting me, asking what was happening and if I was okay. An aunt called Dad, demanding to know why he was taking sides. But when Mom walked through Dad's front door that afternoon with her carry-on bag and her reading glasses pushed up on her head, I knew exactly whose side she was on. She gave me a long hug first without saying anything, and then set her bag down in the hallway. She walked straight to the kitchen table and sat down with that look on her face that meant business. "It's time for a family meeting," she said. "We need to invite Derek and Erica here too. Everyone deserves a chance to speak their piece." I felt my stomach get tight. I know what you're going to say, Mom said, but if we don't let them talk, then they'll always say we didn't give them a fair chance. We give them one chance to explain themselves in front of the whole family, and then we're done. Dad nodded slowly, even though I could see he didn't love the idea either. She has a point. I sat there feeling sick while my parents sent those texts. At 2:45, a car pulled into the driveway and my heart started pounding. Dad went to the window and his jaw got tight. It's Derek. I watched through the curtain as my brother got out of his car and I barely recognized him. He was dressed nice in a professional-looking outfit like he was going to a job interview. His hair was done up and he was carrying a thick folder under his arm. He looked confident. He looked prepared. Mom let him in and Derek walked into the living room with his head held high like he owned the place. He didn't even look at me. He just sat down in the big armchair across from the couch and crossed his legs and set his folder on his lap. "Thank you for giving me a chance to explain," he said to Mom and Dad, completely ignoring me. "I know this has been hard for everyone, but I think once you understand the research behind what Erica and I are proposing, you'll see that we're not doing anything wrong." A few minutes later, another car pulled up, and Erica walked in carrying her laptop bag like she was showing up for a business meeting. She nodded at Dad and Mom, and then sat down next to Derek on the love seat. "I appreciate you all being willing to have this conversation," Erica said in that smooth voice I used to love. "I know my presentation the other day was a lot to take in, but I've put together some new materials that I think will help everyone understand that this isn't a betrayal. It's actually a legitimate lifestyle choice that millions of people around the world practice successfully." Mom held up her hand. "Before you start with any presentations, I think Derek should speak first. He's the one who posted all that stuff online. Let him say his piece." Derek nodded like he'd been waiting for exactly this moment. He stood up from his chair and faced my parents like he was giving a speech at school. "I want to start by saying that I never meant to hurt anyone," Derek began. "I know how this looks from the outside, but you have to understand that falling in love isn't something you can control. It just happens. And what happened between me and Erica was real and pure and beautiful." He put his hand on his chest. "The truth is that my brother never appreciated what he had. For years, I watched Erica try so hard to make him happy. And for years, I watched him ignore her. He was always too busy with work. He would come home and barely say 2 words to her before falling asleep on the couch. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Mom gave me a look that said, 'Wait.' Erica is such a special person," Derek continued. "She's smart and caring, and she gives so much to the people she loves. But my brother couldn't see that. He took her for granted every single day. And when I moved in and started getting to know her, I saw what she was missing. I saw this amazing woman who just wanted someone to appreciate her." He looked right at Mom now, and his eyes were getting shiny like he might cry. "Our connection is real. I know you might not understand it, but what Erica and I have is something special. It just grew naturally from spending time together and really seeing each other." He held up his folder. "And before you say that what we're doing is wrong, I want you to know that there's real science behind this. Polyamory is practiced by millions of people all over the world. This isn't about cheating or betrayal. This is about expanding our understanding of love and family. All I'm asking is that this family evolves its thinking." He sat back down and looked at me for the first time since he'd started talking. "I love you, bro. I never wanted to hurt you, but I also love Erica, and I'm not going to apologize for that. The heart wants what the heart wants." The room went quiet when he finished. Erica leaned forward with her laptop ready to start her own presentation, and I could see she thought she was winning. And I sat there on my parents' couch feeling smaller and more scared than I had since this whole nightmare started, because my brother had just given the performance of his life and I wasn't sure anyone could see through it. But then Mom reached into her purse and pulled out a stack of papers, and I saw Derek's eyes go to that stack and something in his face changed just a little. "Before we look at any more articles about polyamory," Mom said in that calm voice she used when she was about to drop a bomb, "I think we need to talk about something else first. Something about your apartment flood, Derek." Derek's confident posture got a little stiffer. "What about it?" "My apartment flooded and I lost everything. That's why I had to move in with my brother. Everyone knows that." Mom nodded slowly. "Yes, the flood was real. I called your landlord last week to ask about it. He confirmed the whole building had water damage from a broken pipe upstairs." She flipped through her papers. "But here's the interesting part. Your renter's insurance paid out $8,000 for your losses. I have the claim receipt right here. $8,000, Derek. That's a lot of money for someone who supposedly needed $5,000 from his father for repairs." Derek's face was getting pale, but he kept his voice steady. "I used that money to replace my furniture. Everything got ruined in the flood." Mom shook her head. "No, you didn't. Because I also talked to your friend from college, the one you've been texting about all of this for months. She was very helpful once I explained what was happening. She sent me everything." Derek stood up fast, and his folder fell off his lap, scattering articles all over the floor. "You had no right to go through my private messages. Whatever she showed you is taken out of context." But Mom was already reading from the first page. "This is from 3 months ago, 2 weeks before your apartment flooded. You wrote to your friend, and I quote, 'I'm going to move in with my brother for a while. Erica's already paying attention to me when he's not around. It won't take long to get her hooked.'" The room went dead silent. Erica's little smile disappeared, and she looked at Derek with confusion on her face. "What is she talking about?" she asked. "You told me the flood forced you to move in. You said it was an emergency." Derek held up his hands. "She's twisting my words. I was just joking around with my friend." Mom kept reading. "Here's another one one from 2 months ago. You wrote, Erica is so easy to manipulate. She thinks I actually care about her feelings, but really I just tell her what she wants to hear. Once I get her hooked, I'll convince her to divorce my brother and keep the house. It's a nice house, and I deserve it more than he does. Erica stood up from the love seat and took a step away from Derek. You said that about me? You said I was easy to manipulate. Her voice sounded different now, smaller and confused, like someone who just found out the truth. Derek reached for her arm. Baby, that's not what I meant. I was just venting to my friend. You know how guys talk. We exaggerate everything. But Mom wasn't done. She flipped to another page. This one is my personal favorite from 6 weeks ago, right after my son went to that work conference. You wrote, my brother is such a boring workaholic. He doesn't deserve someone like Erica. She needs someone exciting and fun. Someone like me. He just works all the time and ignores her. I'm going to give her everything he won't, and then I'm going to take everything he has. She looked up from the paper and stared right at Derek. A boring workaholic. That's what you called your own brother while you were living in his house and eating his food and planning to steal his wife. I sat there frozen on the couch listening to my mother read my brother's real thoughts out loud. All those texts Derek had sent to Dad calling me controlling and cold. All those complaints about how I didn't appreciate Erica. None of it was because he cared about her. He didn't love Erica at all. He just wanted what I had. The house, the wife, the life I'd spent years building. Erica was staring at Derek like she'd never seen him before. You used me, she said, and her voice cracked a little. This whole time, I thought we had something real. I thought you understood me, but you were just playing a game. Derek tried to laugh it off, but it came out wrong. Too high and too fake. Erica, come on. Those texts don't mean anything. I was just being dramatic with my friend. You know how I feel about you. What we have is real. I love you. But even I could see that his mask was slipping. He didn't look confident anymore. He looked scared. Dad stood up from his chair and walked over until he was standing right in front of Derek. He didn't yell. He didn't raise his voice at all. He just looked at him with this expression on his face that I'd never seen before, like he was looking at a stranger instead of his own son. I'm going to ask you one question, Dad said slowly, and I want you to tell me the truth. For once in your life, tell me the truth. Derek swallowed hard and didn't say anything. Did you ever love Erica? Dad asked. Or was this always about getting what your brother had? The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Derek opened his mouth to answer and then closed it again. He looked at Erica and then at Mom and then at me, and I watched something break behind his eyes. He couldn't lie anymore. The texts were right there in black and white. Everyone had heard what he really thought, and for the first time since this whole nightmare started, Derek had nothing to say. Her silence stretched on for 5 seconds, then 10. Erica made a sound that was almost a laugh, but not really. Oh my God, she said quietly. Oh my God, I'm such an idiot. I believed everything you said. I thought we had this deep connection. I was ready to blow up my whole marriage for you. She looked at Derek with something like disgust. You made me think my husband was the problem. You made me think he didn't appreciate me, but it was all just a game to you. I was just a way to get his house. Derek finally found his voice. That's not fair. I do have feelings for you. Maybe the way I talked to my friend was wrong, but that doesn't mean what we have isn't real. You felt it too, Erica. You can't fake that kind of connection. But Erica was shaking her head. I don't even know what was real anymore. Everything you told me about my marriage, about my husband being distant and cold, was that just stuff you made up to turn me against him? I watched my brother standing in the middle of my parents' living room with his pressed shirt and his carefully combed hair and his folder of articles scattered all over the floor. He'd spent months planning this. He'd tested both our parents to see if they'd support him. He'd manipulated my wife with fake vulnerability and practiced speeches about connection. And now it was all falling apart because Mom did what Derek never expected. Mom did her own research. I stood up from the couch and my legs felt strong for the first time in days. I looked at Erica, who was still standing there with disgust and shame on her face. The divorce papers will be ready Monday, I said, and my voice came out steady and calm. You can expect to hear from my lawyer by the end of the week. Erica looked at me, and for a second I thought she might try to apologize or explain or ask for another chance, but she just nodded slowly like she knew she'd lost the right to ask for anything. Then I turned to Derek, who was still standing there with his mouth open like he couldn't believe this was really happening. You have 48 hours to get your things out of my house, I said. After that, whatever's left goes on the lawn. Derek's face twisted into something ugly. You can't do that. That's my stuff. I have rights. Dad stepped forward. Actually, he can. It's his house and you've been staying there as a guest who's no longer welcome. I suggest you start packing. Derek looked around the room like he was searching for someone to take his side. He looked at Mom, but Mom was staring at him with cold disappointment. He looked at Dad, but he had that same stranger look on his face. He looked at Erica, but she wouldn't even meet his eyes. And finally, he looked at me, his older brother, who he'd called a boring workaholic, whose wife he'd tried to steal, whose life he'd tried to take over. This isn't fair, Derek said, and his voice was shaking. I made one mistake. I fell for the wrong person. That doesn't mean you get to throw me away like I'm nothing. I'm still your brother. I thought about all those texts Mom had read out loud, all the planning and scheming and lying, all the times Derek sat across from me at my own kitchen table drinking tea from my mug while secretly plotting to take everything I had. You're right, I said. You are my brother, and that makes what you did even worse because I trusted you. I let you into my home when you needed help, and you used that to try to destroy my marriage and steal my wife and take my house. I grabbed my keys from the coffee table and walked toward the door. 48 hours hours, Derek. Then your stuff is on the lawn and I never want to see you again. I walked out of my parents' house and got in my car and drove straight home to the house that was still mine, the house I'd helped pay for, the house where I'd be sleeping alone tonight for the first time in 7 years.